Welcome to Under the Surface. This is where we slow down and look at the patterns underneath the stories we tell ourselves. Today's chapter is called Practicing Gratitude, and underneath gratitude is not perfection or positivity. Most of the time, it is survival. It is the decision to notice what is still holding you together when your mind keeps pulling you toward everything that is broken. Gratitude is not pretending life is easy. It is learning how to stand inside a hard life without losing sight of what still matters. Welcome to No One is Normal, the podcast where real stories remind us that none of us are alone. You can also visit the website www.bradhhill.com or www.nooneisnormal.co for resources, updates, and future podcast episodes. I am Brad H. Hill, and each week we talk about the messy, the complicated, and the deeply human moments that shape us and remain in our memories. I am not here to tell anyone how to live. I am here to offer the stories, the insights that made me realize that no one is normal, including me, because healing starts when self-honesty begins. Practicing gratitude used to sound like a trendy slogan to me. It felt like something people stitched onto pillows or hung on the wall in nice homes, not something that had anything to do with survival. It did not sound practical, like a tool, and it definitely did not sound like something that could steady a life that had spent years swinging between the unknown, pressure, regret, and recovery. For a long time, I thought gratitude belonged to people whose lives were already calm, people who had enough distance from pain to sit around appreciating things. I did not understand yet that gratitude is not about pretending everything is fine. It is about noticing what is still good when everything is not. I remember sitting in a leadership class at work and hearing the instructor suggest taking 1 minute every morning to think about what I was thankful for. 1 minute. That was it. No big spiritual performance. No journal full of perfect thoughts. Just 60 seconds of intentional attention. At the time, I remember thinking that it sounded nice, but also a little useless. I had spent so much of my life focused on what I did not have, what I had lost, what I needed to fix, and how far I still had to go, that the idea of stopping to appreciate anything felt almost foreign. My mind had been trained to scan for what was wrong, not what was right. When I finally tried it, it felt awkward at first. I sat there in the quiet and started naming the obvious things. My wife, my parents, my family, the house Bonnie and I built with our own blood, sweat, and tears. The people who believed in me when I could not quite believe in myself yet, even the difficult ones. The people who taught me exactly how I never wanted to lead or treat someone else. Somewhere in that practice, something shifted. Gratitude stopped feeling like a soft word and started feeling like a different way of seeing. It became less about sentiment and more about perspective. This episode is about that shift. It is about learning to be grateful in the middle of real life, not just when everything lines up. It is about learning how to appreciate the people, experiences, lessons, and quiet moments that hold us up when we would otherwise spiral. It is also about learning to offer some of that gratitude inward. Because if I cannot recognize my own progress and survival, I will keep chasing validation from everywhere else and never feel full. Gratitude did not fix my life, but it changed the way I stand inside it. That matters more than I knew when I first sat through that class. For most of my life, gratitude sounded like something made for other people. It was a word that looked good in a quote or on a coffee mug. Not something that had any real use when life felt heavy. My default setting was not appreciation. My default setting was scanning for what was missing, what could go wrong, or where the next hit might come from. When your brain is built around survival, stopping to say thank you can feel fake, almost irresponsible. It can feel like letting your guard down in a world that taught you not to. That leadership class at work cracked something open for me. The instructor said to take 1 minute every morning and think about what I was thankful for. At the time, that sounded too simple to matter. I remember thinking that a minute was not going to change anything. When I finally tried it, the simplicity was part of what made it work. It did not require me to become a different person overnight. It just asked me to pause. At first, I started with the obvious things. My wife, my parents, my family, the house Bonnie and I literally built together. Not just the building itself, but everything it represented. Two people with rough histories putting their hands to something solid and creating a life that did not exist before. Then my mind started drifting in to other places. I thought about the bosses and co-workers who pushed me, challenged me, and saw something in me that I did not always see in myself. I even started thinking about the difficult ones, the people who taught me exactly how I never want to lead, communicate, or treat another person. That was the first big shift. I started seeing that people were either blessings or lessons, and most of the time, they were both. Eventually, the spotlight turned toward the person I had spent the least amount of time appreciating, which was me. That was a strange place to land. I had spent years chasing approval, and almost no time acknowledging my own effort. When I finally took a real inventory, it was jarring. I had gone back to school while working more than full time. I had quit smoking after years of convincing myself I probably never would. I had fought through addiction, relapse, setbacks, burnout, and a lot of self-inflicted pain. I had walked away from jobs that looked good on paper, but were slowly killing me in real life. None of that felt heroic in the moment. Most of it felt like stumbling forward. But gratitude forced me to zoom out and see that younger me would not have believed I could survive half of what I have survived, let alone build something meaningful afterward. The longer I practiced gratitude, the more ordinary things started showing up on the list. Those are the ones that changed me the most. A quiet night on the couch with Bonnie and the animals. A warm meal we cooked together. The routine of planning, shopping, seasoning, serving, eating, and cleaning up afterward. I used to treat those moments like background noise. Gratitude slowed me down enough to see them as proof that I am not living in crisis all the time anymore. This is what love looks like in real life. Someone to eat with. A kitchen that is ours. Ordinary nights that younger versions of me would have taken for granted. Gratitude also changed my relationship with my past. For years I carried my mistakes like a legal case against myself. Every bad choice, missed opportunity, or painful relationship became evidence that I had somehow failed too deeply to deserve anything good. Once gratitude became a real practice, those questions started to shift. Instead of only asking how I screwed something up, I started asking what that season taught me. What did that relationship teach me about boundaries? What did that relapse show me about where I was still in pain? What did that job make clear about what I will never accept again? I still wish I had done some things differently, but I am not using those memories as weapons against myself the way I used to. They are still painful in places, but now they also carry information. One of the deepest layers of gratitude in my life is Bonnie's story. Everything she survived could have ended very differently. There are versions of her life where she does not make it out. There are versions where our paths never crossed. I still catch myself wishing she could have escaped sooner, and then I must remind myself that we do not get to change the past. Gratitude helps me stop mentally rewriting the story and start honoring the reality in front of me. She is here. She is safe. We get to build a life together. That is not something I will ever treat as ordinary. Practicing gratitude has not turned my life into some polished inspirational montage. I still have days where everything feels heavy, where old patterns try to drag me back, and where nothing seems to move the way I hoped it would. The difference now is that I have something to reach for instead of automatically reaching for a bottle, a spiral, or a shutdown. Before I grab my phone or let my thoughts run wild, I try to ground myself in what is still good. Some days it is big things, like my marriage, my health, and the fact that I am still sober. Some days it is embarrassingly small things like hot coffee, a dog leaning against my leg, or 5 quiet minutes in the car where my brain finally stops screaming. Gratitude does not erase the hard stuff. It just gives me a steadier place to stand while I face it. Taking a quick pause here. If this episode is resonating, I would love for you to follow the No One Is Normal podcast on whatever platform you listen on. Every follow helps this show reach people who might need these stories. Now let's jump back in. At its core, this episode is not about forced positivity. It is not about pretending everything happens for a reason, or that pain should be tied up in a bow. It is about training my mind to see the full picture instead of only the damage. Practicing gratitude is really me admitting that I spent most of my life staring at what was broken and missing what was holding me up. This practice became one of the quiet anchors that keeps me from getting pulled under. In the rest of this episode, I want to zoom out into how gratitude actually shifts the brain and body, and then come back to the practical side of what it looks like to build this habit honestly, 1 minute at a time. One of the reasons I take gratitude seriously now is because it is not just a feel-good idea. It has real effects on how the brain and body function. When someone intentionally looks for things to appreciate, the nervous system starts to shift. The body moves a little further away from constant fight or flight and a little closer to regulation. The mind stops scanning only for danger and begins noticing support, connection, and moments of safety. That does not mean life becomes easy. It means the brain stops treating every waking second like a threat assessment. Most people carry a negativity bias. That is not a character flaw. It is an old survival pattern. The brain naturally pays more attention to what is wrong than what is right, because historically, missing danger had bigger consequences than missing comfort. The problem is that in modern life, this bias can trap people in fear, comparison, resentment, and scarcity. Gratitude interrupts that pattern. It pulls attention back towards what is actually working, even if it is small. It teaches the mind that the story is not only about loss, stress, or disappointment. People practice gratitude in different ways. Some keep journals and write down a few things each night before bed. Some say it out loud first thing in the morning. Some build it into family dinners or bedtime routines. The form is less important than the practice itself. What matters is the intentional pause. It is the moment where you say, here is one thing that did not collapse today. Here is one person who showed up. Here is one part of my life I do not want to overlook. That does something to the mind over time. It builds a counterweight to despair. There are countless real-world examples of people leaning on gratitude in dark seasons. Someone sitting in a hospital room might be grateful for a kind nurse, a working machine, or a family member who keeps showing up. A person walking through a divorce may be grateful for the one friend who keeps calling, or for the apartment that is not much, but is at least theirs. A person in recovery may be deeply grateful for one sober day after a week or month of hell. None of those things erase pain. That is not the point. The point is that pain no longer gets to be the only thing visible in the frame. Gratitude can also change relationships. When someone starts noticing and acknowledging what their partner, friend, or coworker does instead of only focusing on what they missed, the tone shifts. Appreciation can soften resentment. Saying something as simple as, I saw the effort that took, thank you for handling that, or I appreciate how you showed up, can build a different foundation over time. People do better when they feel seen. That is true in marriages, friendships, families, and workplaces. Teams work better when people feel appreciated, not just used. There is an important boundary here, though. Gratitude should never be weaponized. It should not be used to gaslight someone into accepting abuse, staying in harm, or pretending a wound was okay, just because they learned something from it. Being grateful for a lesson does not mean pretending the pain was acceptable. Gratitude is not saying it could be worse, so I should shut up and take it. It is saying this is painful and real, and at the same time, there's still something worth holding on to. Both truths can exist together. Both need space. When gratitude is practiced in a healthy way, it becomes a daily recalibration. It does not fix everything, but it gently turns the mind away from only what is broken. It reminds me that even when I am exhausted, there are still people, moments, and experiences that give my life meaning. That awareness does not erase the hard chapters. It just keeps them from being the only chapters I read. Gratitude has become one of the quiet anchors in my life, but I did not arrive there in some peaceful, enlightened way. I arrived there by slamming into enough walls that I finally had to find something that steadied me. For years I woke up and immediately jumped into worry. What did I screw up yesterday? What is waiting for me at work? Who am I disappointing now? My mind never asked what was going right. It only wanted to know what was wrong and what needed fixing. When I first started naming what I was thankful for, it felt small, almost stupid. I remember thinking that naming my wife, my family, or the roof over my head was not really going to change anything. But over time, I noticed that those few moments in the morning became the only part of my day that did not feel like I was already running. In those moments, I was not chasing achievement. I was not outrunning shame. I was just acknowledging that I had made it this far, and that alone meant something. I have spent so much of my life wishing I had done things differently, that I forgot to be grateful I survived long enough to even have regrets. That shift hit me harder than I expected. I am learning to treat my life less like a list of failures and more like a long, messy, hard-earned privilege. I get to wake up next to someone I love. I get to cook in a kitchen I helped build. I get to tell these stories even when my voice shakes. None of that was guaranteed. Gratitude does not erase grief, anger, or exhaustion. It does not remove the hard chapters or rewrite the ones I wish had gone differently. What it does is remind me that those feelings are not the entire story. On the days when my mind wants to drag me back into old patterns, gratitude is the thing that quietly says, look again, there is still something here worth staying for. If practicing gratitude sounds cheesy or unrealistic to you, I understand that. When someone is in the middle of real pain, being told to just be grateful can feel insulting. That is not what I am talking about here. I am not asking anyone to pretend trauma, loss, exhaustion, or heartbreak do not hurt. I am not asking anyone to throw a positive label on something that almost broke them. What I am inviting is a shift in what gets your full attention. Think about the last few days of your life. There were probably things that went wrong. Maybe money is tight. Maybe health is shaky. Maybe your relationships feel fragile. Those things matter. They are real. At the same time, there were probably also moments that did not completely fall apart. A text from someone who checked in. A pet curling up next to you. A song that hit at the right time. A joke that broke the tension for a second. A quiet drive where your thoughts finally slowed down. Gratitude is about naming those moments on purpose, so they do not disappear under the noise of everything else. You might also be someone who gives a lot to other people. Cooking, caregiving, listening, working extra hours, answering the phone, holding space when someone else is falling apart. Those things can become so automatic that they stop feeling meaningful. I want to invite you to look at them differently. Every meal prepared, every ride given, every time you showed up when someone needed you, those are acts of love. What would it feel like to actually notice that instead of dismissing it as nothing? Gratitude is not just for huge wins. It is also for those small, steady ways you keep showing up when you're tired. If the idea of starting a gratitude practice feels overwhelming, keep it simple. Pick one time during the day, maybe when you wake up or before bed. Name one thing you are thankful for, not 10 things, just one. Say it out loud or write it down. Over time, your mind will start noticing more without being forced. You may still have bad days. You may still doubt whether anything is really changing. That is human. Gratitude does not demand perfection. It just keeps nudging your attention back toward what is still holding you up. Most of all, I want to say this. If life has been hard, if you have walked through loss, addiction, illness, betrayal, or heartbreak, and you are still here, there is already something to be grateful for. You kept going. You kept breathing. You kept finding a way, even if it was ugly and messy. That effort deserves acknowledgement. Gratitude can be the way you finally give yourself credit for surviving your own story. Practicing gratitude has not made my life simple, but it has made it more honest. It has forced me to look at what is actually in front of me, instead of only staring at what is missing. Some days, the list of things I am thankful for feels long. Other days, it feels like I am clinging to one thin thread. Either way, I have learned that there is almost always something there, if I am willing to look closely enough. A person who stayed, a lesson I do not want to relearn, a quiet moment that made the noise more bearable. Gratitude is not a finish line. It is a practice. It is a choice made repeatedly, especially when it would be easier to shut down, spiral, or go numb. When I wake up and ask myself what I am thankful for before I do anything else, I am not ignoring the hard parts of my life. I am trying to face them from a steadier place. That is available to anyone listening. It does not require perfect mental health, perfect faith, or a perfect life. It only requires a willingness to pause and notice what has not left you, even when so much has. Wherever you are right now, there is at least one thing in your life that is still worth appreciating. Maybe it is a person, a second chance, or it is simply the fact that you are still here. Hold on to that. Let gratitude wrap around it. Let it remind you that even in the middle of everything you have survived, there is still something in your world that matters. And so do you. That's under the surface. Not to ignore the pain, not to force optimism, but to understand the patterns that shape what we focus on every day. If this chapter brought up grief, exhaustion, or the feeling that life has been harder than most people realize, take a breath and look again. There's always something in your life worth holding on to. Gratitude does not erase the difficult chapters. It reminds us they are not the only chapters in the story. Just a reminder, the stories and conversations in this podcast are for informational and personal reflection only. Nothing shared here should be taken as medical, legal, or professional advice. Always speak with a qualified professional about your own personal situation. Thank you for listening to No One Is Normal. If today's message resonated with you, you can find the book No One Is Normal on Amazon and Kindle, and explore more resources at www.bradhhill.com or www.nooneisnormal.co. Remember, you weren't meant to be normal, you were meant to be you.